Welcome back to Steve Robb Reviews. Today's review is going to be all about these type of connectors and the problems you're going to face with them if you don't know the difference between them. So we're just looking at these ones here, just a regular crimp connector. And I'm going to show you over on the bench here the downfalls for these connectors, where they should be used, where they shouldn't be used, how they're misused, and people just don't know the difference until, they find out that whatever they crimped, it's coming back to bite them big time. So let's go over to the bench, let's take a look. Okay, so let's start off with the regular connectors that you're going to see where you just crimp them and they're just a hard plastic on the outside. And you got all these different styles here. And they all do the same thing, is you use this crimper to crimp these and you secure the wire in there. Well, the problem over the years is that these have never been used in any engineering field where you're going to see, take for instance on automobiles or off-road equipment or that kind of stuff, they don't use these. What they do is they actually use something like these that are weather pack connectors, that go together and they make a seal. So you've got these two styles here, with the weather packs on the end. You feed your wires in either end and it's a weather pack seal. None of these are weatherproof. Now you get onto this side here, and I prefer these more when you can use them, and these are heat shrink ones. And you can see this is the butt connectors here, and say the ring connectors, all the way down in different sizes. So I'll show you this little bit of a chart here, and it shows the color codes for the type of connectors that you have and what size wires you should be using. But if you take a look at that chart, it doesn't quite make very good sense in many respects, because let's just take a look at this for instance. So here's the tool here, and you could see you're supposed to match the color code to the crimp you're going to use. And if you take a look at, say, this one here, you could tell this is never going to fit in here, right? So logic is that, you have to actually figure it out on your own and use proper connectors, because sometimes even these connectors are not the best, crimpers to use. But when you're thinking about using one of these, I'd like you to just take a look in the center there. You see the hole there? Well, it'll say on the connector itself, good for, say, 14 and 16 gauge. But there's a difference between 14 and 16 gauge. And if you take a look at this wire here, this is a 16 gauge wire. And you can see there's lots of space in this one, right? This one here is actually designed for a 14 or 16. And you can still see there's lots of space in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these connectors and I'm going to show you how it actually performs, and show you why people have a mistaken belief in using some crimpers and how they actually perform and the reasoning behind them. So let me just put one of these in the crimper. I'll zoom you in and I'll show you how it works and how it's supposed to actually crimp on the wire, and how sometimes, it actually doesn't do a good job at all. Okay, so that's how the connector would actually fit in there, and the wire would come through the backside. And I just want to show you, as I'm crimping, I want you to watch how this compresses. See how that's going oblong on you? And when you get down to the proper crimp, the tool actually opens up on its own. And that's what it looks like right there. Now I want to show you what it looks like when you put a piece of wire in there. Okay, this time you can see the wire in there. And I'm crimping it. And then the tool opens up. And there it is in there. So let's take a good look at that wire and let's analyze exactly what happened. Okay, so I got you really zoomed in there the best I can, but I want you to really pay attention to, you see all these wires spread across here? How many of them wires do you think are actually good and secure and made a contact using the crimper? Because I'll tell you something, a lot of them wires in there, they're loose. They're not tight. You can see how it's all spread across from one end to the other. Not a very good connection at all. And that's the downfall to these type of connectors, because when it comes down to it, the connector crimper itself makes one crimp here and makes one crimp up here. And I'll show you the falsehood of a lot of people who think that, well, this is a great connection. When they tug on the back of this sheathing on your wire, they pull on it and say, oh, this is a good connection. False, false, false. Let's take a look. Let's find out why. Okay, so I'm going to show you exactly how these crimpers actually work. And if you take a look, you can see that, well, there's a hollow spot here, and then you got the two pieces on the top. So when these pliers crimp down, you're getting a crimp on here and here. And when you get to the end, well, it automatically releases. So let's just put one of these in, and you can see with each one of these connectors that there's a rib, and it goes along and it stops. So this is higher here. So this actually fits in the crimping tool so that when it gets to the back side, you can see on the back side there, it actually stops in the slot. So when you're got this in the tool, it automatically stops when it gets to the end there, right? Okay, now if you take a look at the corresponding places where it's going to leave a crimp, will be right here and right there. So what I did was, I made a cutaway, and I'll show you how this actually looks now. So where the black line is, you're going to see that's where it's going to leave one crimp, right? And then it's going to leave a corresponding crimp. I'll show you. So I'll put it in the tool for you. And so that's right about there. Now you can't tell by looking in the tool, but I'm going to explain this to you. So it will crimp here. And then it's going to crimp up here, off of the metal. So you've got this terminal here, and you have all the metal that's being crimped with one side of the jaw. The other side is crimping up here, off of here onto just the plastic. So a lot of people think they have a good connection in here. They tug on the wire, and it's only being held by this plastic being crushed. So when you take a look at a lot of these terminals, you could see that it's crushed here and it's crushed up here. So pulling on here is absolutely useless. I'll tell you what my resolve is. I'll show you right now. Okay, so what you're looking at right there is a wire ferrule, and these here fit right over top of your wire. It encapsulates it. They're copper, they're tinned copper, and that's the way I like to roll. And you put your connector over top like this. Now you can see it's sticking out a bit. You can trim that off if you like, but this is what we're going to do here. We're going to crimp it for you right now, and I want you to take a look at the difference between what you've seen on the other crimps and this one. So I'll put it right here, and we'll just crimp down on it. And then as again, it opens up on itself. can you see in there how it's really crimped in there? But it's all encapsulated inside. And that's far superior. Now what I really like to do when I can, is solder. So I will actually just solder the wire first and then put it in and crimp it. But you can see how that's encapsulated in there. There's no fine wires on the left and no fine wires on the right, and I think that's a far better connection. And so let's just briefly talk about the heat shrink connectors and what I like about using them and how they're a good alternative as well. And so let's go to that next. So if you just take a look at these ones here, you could see that your crimping goes from here all the way over to here. It doesn't go near your wires, the outside casing. It only goes to your connectors. So when you're using the crimping tool, it only connects in the center like this. So you crimp on this side first, and then you slide it over and crimp the other side. And your heat gun will melt the outside of these to cause your strain relief. And when I'm using these joiners or butt connectors or this style right here, I still use these wire ferrules, which are very cheap. You get like, this was like 600 for like 15 bucks, last year lifetime for most people, and they go from like 22 gauge up to number 10. And I use them as well, or I'll solder the wire first before I actually insert it. Well, thanks for joining me here today. I hope you liked a little bit of a presentation on the crimp connectors, the different styles of crimp connectors. And like I said, I like to actually solder the wire or put the wire ferrule over top. I find it's a much better connection than just crimping the wires down flat and squishing them. So the thinner the diameter of the wire, when you think about it, a 14 gauge wire is like 4 times the size of a 22 gauge wire. And you start using a lot of these connectors, and the wire, when you put it inside, you take a look, well, the hole is pretty big, and you crimp that down, and you tug on the end, and you say, oh, that's a good connection. Well, your wire inside is still flopping around. So, yeah, you have to experiment with these things, and what I've noticed over years is I call working with these things bush fixes, because that's where they should be kept, is in the bush. Now, they do have their usefulness, and they do have their purpose, but generally, I've seen them on so many different places where they shouldn't be used, where, yeah, you can pay somebody to do a job using these things here, and, well, you're going to pay them again in the future to do it all over again, because sometimes you may get 2 or 3 years, you may even get like 5 years, but eventually, yeah, these connectors, they're not the best. Thanks for joining me here today. If you haven't seen this channel before, you're welcome to subscribe, see some interesting things that I do every week. Cheers.